everyone, and welcome to today's episode, Jewels in the Jar with Angel. This is actually the famous and wonderful roommate of mine who sings in the intro. She sounds amazing.
Thanks.
We tried so hard for me to get to sing it, and it just didn't sound as good as the other one. And she's studying music right now in a few different courses online, and so she had this fancy program and this fancy voice and all these things. So anyway, she did that for me, and it was really nice. And I'll have it forever, so thanks.
Just to clarify, though, Kyra is also awesome, and we did not put her in there because she sounded bad. It was because, there are just so many layers going on. It was hard to add more on there.
No, I'm not trying to bash myself, but it just wasn't as good as the first recording.
Yeah, I got you. Just wanted that on there for the record.
I appreciate it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Ooh, sure. Like Kyra said, I'm studying music online, just doing some production courses and stuff, figuring out how to put it all together on a computer and get it out there on Spotify and stuff. So yeah, that's exciting. I'm also studying English with an emphasis in creative writing at SUU, so it's a good time. I love words and music, basically.
You said Spotify. Is it because it's free to put music on there?
I mean, yeah, that's just what I use to stream music, but I'm planning to put it on Apple Music and stuff too, just all the platforms. That's just the one that I think of when I say get my music
just
out there.
Don't forget about Amazon Music, because that's what
that's
I
what
have.
you use?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
It's awkward when there's a song on Apple Music or Spotify and it's not on Amazon. Most of the time it's on all of them, though, but every once in a while. Mm-hmm. I put up such a fight at first when my parents switched to Amazon Music. I was like, no, I like Apple Music. And then eventually I just switched over and I like it now. But
nice.
I put up such a fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic we're going to talk about today, change of topics, is jewels in the jar, as in marbles in the jar. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this analogy, and if you haven't, I don't know exactly where it came from. I know Brene Brown has talked about it. I don't think it came from her, though. But it's basically the idea that each person we know has a jar, and we tell them things or open up about vulnerabilities, and then based on how they respond and if they're trustworthy or we can rely on them, we put marbles in their jar. And Angel and I were talking about that one day, and she said they're kind of like little jewels. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the alliteration, jewels of a jar. So I thought we would jump on that and kind of keep talking about that. We have some notes written down and things that we just kind of thought we would bring up again. But one of the things that stood out to me is that Angel talked about the little things you share being jewels, and they're vulnerable, but they're also sometimes refined. So what do you think, Angel?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were having this discussion that one night. We love the late night roommate conversations.
Yeah, they're
fun. Good. But I was thinking, marbles, kids trade marbles because it's fun and you want to collect cool different things. Mm-hmm. When they're jewels, they're personal, they're precious to you specifically, and you know how precious and valuable they are. But if you just hand it away to someone random, they're going to say, oh, that's pretty, that's cool, and they might not understand the value of it. But if you're this is why this is important to me, this jewel is from the wedding ring of my great-great-grandmother or something, this is special.
Right.
It just adds more personality, more value to it.
I couldn't agree more. I love that it is such a perfect analogy of things that are precious to us. This jewel is specifically from one of the hardest nights of my life, but I got through it. It was a refining fire, so take care of it. Here's my jewel. And I love that idea more than the marbles, because it's just marbles, It's oh, here's a marble, let's see how fast it will go down this track that we just made. Mm-hmm. But jewels are a little bit more precious and a little bit more reverent, maybe, in a way. A little bit more respected, and I like that idea. One of the other things I like about jewels is when I think of marbles, I kind of think of the same type of thing, just a circular, spherical thing. But jewels are all different sizes and shapes and colors, and I like that idea too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super fun. I also love the idea of putting a jewel in someone's jar. That act of being vulnerable and sharing with them and opening up. And I don't know, when I think of dropping a marble in a jar, it sounds in my brain like a little kind of jar, a bong, But when you put a jewel in the jar, I imagine a tiny little dink, just a little gentle, you want it to be received well, you want it to make an impact, and you want to hear the way your words land, you know. It's
Absolutely.
just more special.
Some of the things we talked about in our late night roommate discussion was the permission not to do something. And I can't remember exactly why that was related to the topic, but I just wrote that down. And I think one of the things that we were talking about is sometimes you really don't want to do something, but then you ask someone and they're like, oh, you don't have to do that. And you're like, oh, thanks. I just needed permission not to do that.
Yeah.
It's almost like you just need validation that, you know, your choice is okay. Because sometimes it's scary. You're like, you know. So what do you think about that? I can't remember exactly what we talked about, to be honest with you.
I think that was, like, more along the lines of, like, being accepted by other people. Sometimes we're people pleasers and we want to do what people want us to do because we want them to like us, you know. So when we have the permission to say, like, oh, I don't want to do that, we're like, let's not do that, please, because I don't like it. Then it's like opening up and being vulnerable and risking rejection of someone saying, like, no, I want to do this. Like, we are doing this.
Yeah, or else.
Yeah.
That's true. I didn't think about that. I love another thing, this kind of is related, is having the courage to speak up and share about yourself even though it's scary.
Yeah, I used to struggle with that a lot.
I think just being vulnerable in general. I mean, you ask a class full of students, who likes being vulnerable? And no one raises their hand because it's scary.
It is, yeah.
And the thing is, you can't connect and bond with other people unless you're vulnerable. At least you can't like make like really strong, meaningful connections. But it's scary to do that.
It is, yeah. It makes me think a lot of the culture of Italy, where I served part of my mission. I had a really hard time fitting in with the culture there at first because of that reason. The way they talk and have conversations is like they share a thought. There's no gap in any conversation. Everyone like talks over each other and just like says everything about themselves as a way to open up and connect with people instead of like asking questions like, oh, like what was this like for you? And waiting to hear and then saying like, oh, for me it was like this. Instead they're just like, well, my life is this way. And then they just like wait for you to respond and say something about your life.
That's funny.
But it was really hard for me at first because I was taught to, you know, wait your turn in the conversation.
Right.
But if I did that in Italy, I just would never have a chance to talk. I had to force myself to talk over people in a different language and hope that they weren't offended.
That's probably scary.
It was so scary.
That sounds terrifying.
But, you know, that helped me a lot because before, like, even in the States, like, back in America, I would have a hard time just even expressing my opinion or sharing things about my life because I was worried I would be overbearing or arrogant, you know. But really, when you open up that way, you're giving people the chance to know you and to see you and to value you as a person.
Yeah, I love that. It's scary, but it's also really rewarding when it works out.
Yeah.
Especially because you may drop a few jewels in their jar and then they'll drop a few in yours.
Yeah.
And it's like this, you know, mutual reciprocated relationship that feels really good. I think that's one of the best things of life is connections and relationships when they're reciprocated and you both love each other and you have this mutual respect.
For sure.
One of the other things that I liked is that we talked about dipping your toe in. And that's another thing too, is there's all different sizes of jewels. And so when you are stressed or wanting to share something, you can just share a tiny jewel and see what they take.
Yeah.
And then work up if you need to, you know, or if you feel like you can to make that relationship better.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like I do that a lot in very subtle ways, and sometimes people don't even register that I'm like opening up to them. And they're like, oh yeah, like whatever, and I'm like, no, that was special.
Please take care of that.
I like that thing about me. Please like it.
Yeah, for real. No, I really get that. And it's also scary too because sometimes people will open up to you about things and you don't know that it's really important to them. And it doesn't seem important to them maybe in a way that they open up about it because they're scared. So they kind of like hide it a little bit, you know? And then it's hard. How do you make sure that you respond in a way that's like sensitive, but then also, you know, in a way that's like honest to yourself?
Yeah, authentic. Yeah, for sure. That's hard.
One of the things in class we talked about was resilience, as I've talked about in a previous episode. And my professor said that resilient people are not afraid to ask for help. And that's what we talked about before that class, is having a good enough relationship with someone to ask them to help you with things you're struggling with. And I feel like that is one of the biggest indicators of having a good relationship with someone.
Yeah.
If they're not like the super dependent person that wants you to do everything for them. But if they like are scared of independent and that kind of stuff, then it is hard to ask for help. Like, I have a hard time asking for help sometimes.
Yeah.
'Cause I just don't want to be a burden, or I feel bad, or,
Right.
you know, I'm like, oh, I can just do that myself. But sometimes it's better and okay to ask people for help, especially because they feel needed and wanted.
Yeah, for sure. That makes me think of something I heard once. Somebody said, if you want to be a friend, you offer help. If you want to make a friend, you ask for help. Because when you're offering help, yeah, right? I was like,
that.
whoa, mind blown.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
You should say that one more time so I can, I can get it.
When you want to be a friend, you offer help. If you want to make a friend, you ask for help.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I did not understand that concept for so long. I used to be like, oh, I want to be such a good friend. If I'm being a good friend, then people will be a good friend back to me.
Right.
Sometimes they just don't get it. They
or
don't.
Sometimes they don't know what you need.
Yeah, exactly. You just gotta tell them what you need, and
it's
they'll
hard.
help you. Yeah, it's hard.
And because that's scary too, asking for someone for something that you need. Because what if they say no? Or what if they do it in a way that doesn't, I don't know, it's not like respectful of what you need, if that makes sense. Like they do a half a job or something.
Or if they just say like, oh, suck it up, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, then you're like, I'm never going to ask you to do anything else ever for me ever again. Relationships are such an interesting, complicated thing.
They really are.
I was thinking about the millennium and like still dating people. What is that going to be like? Like, is it still going to be as awkward as it is now? Or are we going to have, I don't know, more confidence? Or, I don't know, something like, hey, I like you. I'm sorry, I don't. You're like, okay, I'll go find someone else. You know?
Like,
because nowadays, like saying, I like you and waiting for someone else to be like, I don't. And you're like, I can't leave the house, you know? Like, I'm too embarrassed to be alive.
Honestly, though, like, if we make it to the millennium, we're gonna be like some of the really good people, and only good people will be left.
True.
So, like...
That's true. At that point... But still, if they reject you because they're just not interested, it's still gonna... I don't know if it'll be hard. Probably.
Yeah.
Or if we'll just have so much confidence and love that we'll be like, cool, sounds good. Let me go talk to someone else. You know, I don't know. It would be so interesting in dating, though, if people could just be clear about what they...
Oh my gosh.
Like,
my gosh.
Why can't people communicate?
Right?
That's my
like,
question.
Tell me what you're thinking and feeling. It would make this so much easier.
Okay, so if you had the option, would you like to read minds?
Selectively.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be cool if I could be like, okay, right in this moment, I want to know what they're thinking.
Right.
But I don't want a constant bombardment of what people are thinking, because that would just be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'd have such a headache.
Really, though. There'd be no silence in your mind.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I need quiet.
Yes.
You know, I'm definitely an extrovert, but I love my me time and my alone time. And so, yeah, that would be hard. I'm thinking about the Twilight books and the movies. And they're at dinner.
Poor Edward.
I know. And Belle's like, what's that guy thinking about? He's like, he's thinking about this.
Yeah.
And he's like telling her. It's just funny. It's funny how media portrays those superpowers too. It's just a good thing that I can't read minds. I think it's just good that we don't have superpowers.
It's true. I feel like it would also ruin a lot of the surprise.
Oh, absolutely.
A big part of the reason why we're here is to learn, and if there was no guessing, then we wouldn't have to dig and learn about other people and value them. So.
Right. Let's jump off on that track, because why not?
Sure.
I think one of the fun things, well, this isn't fun actually, one of the interesting things about life is I think sometimes we're placed with certain family members specifically to work things out.
Yeah.
Because in real life, if you have a friend and they are not working well together anymore, then it's healthy and completely understandable to no longer be friends with them. Like, you just, boom, they're gone, you know? And you can still be civil to them, and if you see them and all these things. But with family members, that doesn't really work out.
You're kind of stuck with them.
Yeah, you're stuck with them. And I was talking to a friend about this, that because we are family with them, that means that there's an opportunity to work things out, even though it's really hard or really scary. Because if we weren't connected, then we wouldn't feel that pressure.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, oh my gosh. This makes me think of, like, companions on the mission. I used to always wonder, like, why can't we choose our own companions?
Yeah.
But it's for that reason, you know, like when you're forced to be with somebody,
you have to make things work.
Yeah. And it's hard, and that's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. Yep. That's the thing too, though, is sometimes, not always, sometimes it can be more meaningful afterwards.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
But that's only sometimes, because sometimes it's just a pain in the butt. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's true.
But it definitely is interesting. In my class about family, we were talking about family, and it's like simply the fact that you're related means that you have this, I don't know, responsibility or this bond towards someone. You know, if they go down a wrong path, you're not like, oh, that's my brother Joe, we're done with him. Like, he no longer exists. You know, it's like, no, it's our brother Joe. He's having a really hard time. We still love him. You know, I think that's another really vital reason, important reason we have families, is so that we have people that won't give up on us or aren't supposed to give up on us.
Yeah. On the other note, too, though, I know a lot of people in my life that are unfortunately in families that don't love them or don't treat them well.
Right.
And it's hurtful for them to be nice to them and to try and foster a relationship with them. So it's kind of like hard there, because I feel like it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is.
Like,
I was just thinking that exactly same thing.
Like when you do try and foster those relationships, it's like heaven points for you, you know?
Right.
But also it can just...
But it's scary.
Yeah,
because you try to hand out your jewel again and again and again, and they continue to throw it back at you.
Yep. You're like, I don't want this. This is garbage.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're like,
kidding me?
You're like, seriously? I'm trying so hard here.
Right.
It's such a tricky thing, and obviously every single situation is different, and so there's no easy solution or easy answer. But I do think I am a supporter of people continuing to try to work things out.
Yeah.
I understand there are some really abusive or unhealthy relationships, but even trying to work those out in your own mind, in your own heart, so that you can heal. You know, like cutting them off just completely and trying to get rid of them from your mind and your life and everything is not going to help you out, because they're your family.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like it's healthy to have some distance and some space for a time.
Absolutely.
And then maybe go back and try again later, you know?
Yeah, making connections with family or continuing to try to work things out doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. Like, boundaries are extremely healthy and should be there for sure.
Yeah. But I also completely understand and respect people who choose to not foster those, you know? Like, like you said, there's no fix-all solution for everybody, but it's just really hard. My dad grew up in a very abusive home, like very physically and emotionally abusive home, and we just don't really see those grandparents ever. Like, I think I could probably count on my fingers how many times I've seen those grandparents, and it's kind of sad, but I'm okay with it because I don't want my dad to be hurt more by seeing them, you know?
Right. You want what's best for him.
Yeah, I want what's best for him, and I've seen how much pain he's worked through to try and heal from everything that he's been through with them. And I wouldn't want to force him ever to
absolutely not.
Try and forgive them. But
it's definitely got to be an individual decision.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, like, I can encourage him to try and, like, think of it in a different way, or try and find ways to forgive them, but you really can't force that on anybody, and it's not fair to.
I mean, I truly believe that when you hold grudges against people, you're really just poisoning yourself.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not saying, okay, forgive and forget. I'm saying give that gift to yourself and get rid of that hatred and that confusion. And it is not easy.
No.
I'm 100% not saying that's super easy to do. Do it right now. I'm saying I think that's what's healthiest for you.
Yeah.
Is to learn how to forgive. Once again, not easy. But when you hold grudges and when you hold hatred in your heart, it doesn't lift you up. It doesn't make your life better. It kind of fuels that misery, honestly. Welcome to Miseryville.
Yeah.
It's kind of what... My professor said that the other day, actually. He said, welcome to Miseryville. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's rough. I love the poison thing you said. It reminds me of, like, a quote I heard. I just have so many quotes.
No,
Sorry.
please. I love quotes.
That I heard somewhere in church. Hate is drinking poison and hoping it kills the person you hate, you know?
Yes.
It's just so counterintuitive.
It is.
It doesn't do anything.
It really is. And it's unfortunate when people's whole purpose of life is that hatred or that anger, and it consumes them.
It's so sad
because there's so much else in life to live and be joyful about, and when something completely takes up your whole mind space of how angry you are or how frustrated you are about this one thing, I mean, you're taking away opportunities from yourself to live a good life.
That's true. And like if you channeled that energy into probably anything else, it would be so much better.
Go paint or something.
There you go. Paint your emotions, and then you'll find something happy to paint eventually.
Yeah, one day, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Turning our emotions into something healthy. Bon-adaptive ways of coping. We just talked about that recently.
Yeah.
Of doing the things that are healthy to help you be better so that you can thrive rather than just survive. Because I believe that there are a lot of things in life that are really hard. But I believe that life is generally good. And I understand with mental health that's not the case at times, and that can be really hard. But there is so much good out there, and you're going to find what you look for.
Yeah.
If you're looking for negative things, you'll find it. I don't know if you've been to 2023, but you can find it.
There's a lot of it.
Yeah, but if you go out and you look for good and you create the good, you'll find that too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so true. Look for the good in everything.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Do you want to share the word of the day? Because I don't want to say it wrong.
Oh, sure.
Acquiescence, right?
Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
Okay, I'm just going to say it then, and you do the quote. So
All
you
right.
pull up the quotes while I share the word. Okay, so the word of the day today is acquiescence, and it is the reluctant acceptance of something without protest. Angel, how do you want to relate that to our topic today?
I want to relate that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like the jewels in the jar aspect, almost. The person that you're giving your jewels, like your vulnerable memories and experiences to, that is whether or not they accept you. It's kind of like acquiescence.
Oh, that's so good.
Not always. Sometimes people are very accepting.
Yeah,
and
they're like, give me that jewel. I love it.
I want to be rich with your love. Give me all your jewels.
I want to be rich with your love. That's the best thing ever.
So priceless. But I mean, sometimes people are like, oh, like, do I want to hear this story? Like, when you, depending on how you build it up.
That is so true. Yes, I think another thing that we didn't hit is that receiving jewels is vulnerable too.
It's true.
How do you respond in a way that will protect them, but you're still, I don't know, not being overburdened or something like that at times? I love that. Acquiescence, the reluctant acceptance of something without protest. So someone may share a story with you and you're like, okay, I guess I'm accepting this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to interrupt this person.
It's kind of interesting.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Good one.
Thanks.
That's good.
I feel like I kind of relate to that concept sometimes too, in the sense that, I don't know, I feel like I have kind of one of those personalities where people randomly unburden themselves and just kind of like literally just tell me their whole life trauma story, and I'm like, I'm there for it. I'm here to listen for it and give them the peace of mind that they need, but also it's just like, wow, I met you 10 minutes ago.
Right.
What?
That might have been too much. Yeah.
Like, I'm totally going to respond in a way that I feel is appropriate, but
it also might be overstepping a tiny bit.
Sometimes, but like...
Not always, but maybe.
Yeah.
And I bet that's hard too, because you want to accept them, but at the same time you're like, how much can I handle emotionally right now?
That's true too. Yeah.
Because you don't want to like hold on to those emotions, because that can happen too. At least it's happened to me.
Yeah, and you kind of got to find ways to either let that go or just find other ways to cheer yourself up later.
Absolutely.
But I feel like it's also kind of a compliment when people feel like you're a person they can indulge
that's true.
in. Yeah.
No, that's very true. That's a big compliment.
They can confide in and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
No, I agree.
It's interesting.
Do you want to share the quote that you came up with?
I would love to. It kind of reminds me of us and like our roommates and everything.
Oh, I love it.
So I actually picked two. I couldn't decide between them.
I mean, I share like 8 million quotes sometimes, so it's good.
All right, nice. I am a huge fan of Ralph Waldo Emerson. He is like a transcendentalist philosopher back in like the 1800s or something. And he wrote this very famous scholarly essay called Friendship. And the whole thing is just all about connecting with people and how to be vulnerable in effective and sensitive ways and reciprocate that when it's given to you, So I feel like it's just so good, and it makes me cry every time I read it. But anyways,
let's go.
The quote.
I'm ready to accept this jewel.
All right. This first quote just says, "It is one of the blessings of old friends that you can afford to be stupid with them." And I just think
love
it's so
that.
Yeah, like when you get to know someone.
You can be yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just take off the filters and be idiots together.
Yes.
But then on the other hand, he says something else. It says, "A friend is a person with whom I may be sincere." And I feel like, You're your 100% real self when you have a real friend. You can be the silly weirdo that you are behind the scenes, or you can be a deep, emotional kind of person that you are behind the scenes too, you know?
I think that's wonderful. It's beautiful. I love the complexity of friendship. Even though it's scary and even though it's vulnerable, there is beauty in it.
So much, yeah.
And it's simple. It's simple and complex and beautiful all at the same time. It's almost like life or something. I don't know.
Right? I don't know.
In my personality theory class, we've been talking about how relationships are the most basic need. Almost more important than breathing. Yeah. And it's been interesting to learn about that and think, well, yeah. And a lot of people are like, oh, you know, relationships, yada, yada. But it is something we need. Our brains are built that way. So, anyway, any last closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thanks for
thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Our late night discussions are a lot of fun, so I thought we'd bring it onto the podcast. Angel suggested we just bring a microphone up to our room and just record. I'm like, that's a good idea. Who knows? Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Find meaning, satisfaction, and joy from the journey. I'm Kyra and Angel, and this is Imperfectly Broken, the podcast.